right, Vic, congratulations, first of all, and great to see you again, and into the Hall of Honor, and tell us what it means to you, first of all.
Well, let me first say a deep gratitude to the J-Club. Even though they had a lapse in judgment when they nominated me, I want them to know how honored I am for making this selection and single out Luke and Dan and Tom Freeman, our current president. Extremely grateful, and my congratulations to the real inductees. You're the reason we have a Hall of Honor. So thank you for your service and your dedication and your excellence at St. John's.
So you were recruited by both John Gagliardi and Jim Smith, and I understand they combined on a visit to your house. That had to be pretty interesting as they recruited you to play two sports, which now kind of run somewhat simultaneously, we hope, or, what was that like?
Well, consider that was 50 years ago, and I was a senior in high school. And both of them were really legends already at that point. So it was a great honor, and I remember some particular parts of it. We met for dinner at the Torchlight, which is a supper club between Montgomery and New Prague, if you're familiar with that area. John and Jim drove down together in the same car, about an hour and a half drive to Montgomery. My mom and dad were there, and two Johnnie alums, Bob Liebens and Tom Kelm from Montgomery. And we were having a great conversation, and I mentioned this to Jim, that I was going to refer to a conversation that John brought up. And I told Jim the reason I'm doing that is because John's not in a position to dispute what I'm saying right now. So what I remember particularly from that is that during the course of our dinner, he asked my mom, he said, well, where do you want Vic to go to college? And Mom mentioned, well, Notre Dame, the university, he's getting a lot of people talking to him, but I'd really like him to go to Gustavus. Because Montgomery was close to Gustavus. We played all our district games there and stuff, and she's thinking, I'm sure, that, well, I could go see him play. So John, and John could, those of you on the 65 team know this better than any of us, could do this better than I'm going to try to do it now. But John started out saying, well, Mrs. Moore, the world has got a lot of conflict right now. It's very, very difficult. Vic will go to Gustavus. He'll meet a pretty Gustavus girl, a Lutheran girl. He'll get a mixed marriage. And the world is complicated enough without having to deal with that. And your grandkids, are they going to be raised Catholic or Lutheran, or you don't want to deal with that. So
quite the selling point, I see. Yeah, he's a closer.
Without missing a beat, he then turns to my dad and he says, well, Mr. Moore, don't you want Vic to have a job after he graduates? And he turned to Tom Kelm, and I was going to mention this later in another question, but Tom then offered me a job right there on the spot. So at that point, my mom and my dad were telling me, you should go to St. John's.
Well, what a great recruiting story. You don't see that happen I think Gary Foshing's probably going to use that. Maybe. You never know. So speaking of jobs, for a long time now, you've been one of the heavy hitters down at the state capitol, working first as chief of staff for Roger Moe and then in government relations. What lessons did you learn at St. John's that you took down to the Capitol?
Yeah, that's a good question because, it's been 50 years now. I'm having my 50-year reunion at St. John's next summer. And I've been blessed in my political career to work with some outstanding people. So there are a couple of things that I want to point out specifically. There's actually a third thing, and I'll get to that in a minute. But it was my St. John's connection. I mentioned Tom Kelm at that dinner with Gagliardi and Coach Smith. Tom Kelm offered me a job at his then Puller Panel Company. While I was in college, he became Wendell Anderson's chief of staff. I was soon to graduate, and he asked me if I wanted to come to work for him. He got me a job in the Minnesota State Planning Agency. The head of the planning agency's name was Jerry Christensen. Guess what? He was a Johnnie. So it was my St. John's connection that got me there in the first place, okay? The second point was the behavior. I was blessed with working with some very good people. You mentioned Senator Roger Moe. I was the chief of staff for the Senate Democrats for 22 years. And Roger acted very much like the way my coaches acted in St. John's. And, you know, maybe it's a too often used phrase about Benedictine values, but he was very competitive. We tried like hell to beat the Republicans in elections, and we had success. We did a good job. He thought good public policy is good politics. And that was a behavior that I learned from John Gagliardi, Jim Smith, and my baseball coach, Dunstan Tucker. And whether it's Benedictine values or not, I can tell you right now, with the way politics is so divisive right now, we could use a little bit of Benedictine values in politics today, and that's St. John's. So.
Very, very, very correct, no doubt.
If I might just add, I meant to do this when I was welcoming everybody. I wanted to single out two people. Jim Smith's been recognized already. Jim was my basketball coach for 4 years. I had the great honor with him and John to present them with this plaque. And while this is so important to me, Jim, giving it to you was the highlight of my years at St. John's. And the other one is Joe Muka. Joe is from my hometown in Montgomery, and he's much older than me. But so, when I was a kid, he was my idol. And Joe, I just want to let you know that it's such an honor for me to be up here on this stage with you today. You continue to be my hero. So, one last thing. Now this is beginning to sound like a filibuster, and you were there when Gary Fasching accused me of filibustering at the football lunch. That's not something I learned from St. John's, Gary. That's a filibuster.
Starting to be like a football luncheon talk from you. I'm just saying.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. I'm just extremely grateful. It's a tremendous honor. I'm sheepishly accepting it because there are hundreds of people that should be standing up here with me to get this. You shouldn't have to get an award for doing something you love, and it's a lot of fun, and this has been for me.
Congratulations, and thank you very much.